Okay, I've got a thumbs up, guys. We're all feeling a little frisky since we haven't been together in a while. This is our Facebook meeting for work session for our regular meeting, which ends 6. So we'll call the meeting to order. We've got a good complement of folks in with us. And our first item is going to be a presentation by Daniel Haviland on the proposed changes to the Unified Development Code. And I saw him right there. He is. Daniel, let me say this. Daniel's been working on this just feverishly for the last few weeks, and so most of this is falling on him, and I really appreciate all that he's done to put these changes in a way that we can understand them clearly and address things that we need to address. So thank you, Daniel. Go ahead.
So this is the 9th revision to the UDC since it was originally adopted, and it looks like a lot, but it really is not a whole lot. There's one big section and a lot of little changes. I'm going to run through the stuff that's not related to sidewalks or construction dumpsters or some of the stuff Cody's going to cover with stormwater and floodplain. So in the first one up here is removed or added a reapproval process for conceptual master plans. It was something that was just left out in the initial one. So when the plan expires and nothing's changed, it just goes straight to the board for just a reapproval. And that approval lasts for another 2 years. And then the next one's related to sidewalks. I'll get into more of that later. So is the next one. And then revised the building width requirements to allow for a special exception. That's in a form-based district. The way it was written, there was no option for a variance or anything. And this just gives them some an additional process to kind of go through if they can't comply. And then the next one is adding the use of convenience store gas station with a special exception in certain zoning districts that are mainly residential. This kind of came about with Adelaide was looking at the possibility of adding a small convenience store gas station within their development, which would be appropriately, if appropriately done. So that's why allowed as a special exception gives us a process to move forward with something like that. Steen will go into the portable storage containers a little more in a minute. The next one is not a change in requirement, it's just moving the requirement. There was an open space landscape requirement that was kind of buried in section 14.11 that when you're doing a landscape plan, you're looking at the chart, you don't necessarily look at that section. So it's moving out of that section, putting it in a chart where it makes more sense. The next one is just another reference back to the portable storage containers. It's just moving some language from that so that new section can stand alone. Sidewalks, then back to the landscaping in 14.3. There's just some clarification that when you install plants, it should be common sense, but when you install at the time of installation, they should be healthy, not dead. So it's just fortifying that language a little bit.
Say that.
Obviously, it's come up. And then another thing about moving that open space requirement up. And then Cody will get into the rest of the stuff. So now I'm going to get into the big lift of this one, which is the sidewalks. So as you can see, there's basically 4 sections that are being touched. The first 2 up there, 2 and 3, are loosely related just to the process, where 9 and 14 are related more to the new maps that are being generated. The current process shown here on the left is you trigger by site plan, building permit, or subdivision. And so you either can comply, you build the sidewalks, or you provide a surety and build the sidewalks later. Or you can't comply, in that case you go to a variance, 2 public hearings, Board of Adjustments Appeal, Board of Aldermen, and then you have to do a build an alternate location or the fee in lieu. That process, if you can't comply, is just really long, 30 to 45 days. And generally what we found out is most people, when they start off that variance process, they already agree to do the fee in lieu or agree to do the alternate location. Just as staff, we couldn't just say, go ahead and do it. So the new proposed process is adding, kind of beefing up the administrative adjustment section that allows for staff, Cody and myself, to review it. Choose an alternate location first, where you build a sidewalk to the same square footage as you were required to do. Or you do a paid fee in lieu for that sidewalk for us to eventually make a connection in that area. If you choose not to do one of the alternatives that we're suggesting, then you have the option for the traditional variance approach, which is the same process. So with that being said, currently the development zone map, which is sidewalk development zone map, which is on the left, that is in section 14 and 15. Section 14 is related to mainly to site development, what you're building on the site. Section 15 is subdivision development. We use the same map. So if you build or subdivide anything within that pink area, you are required to do a sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk, property line to property line. If you're on a corner, that's both street frontages. That's been very problematic in enforcement and actually doing it. So we've broken that map into 2 separate maps. The top one is the sidewalk, and it's kind of, terms kind of mixed together. The sidewalk area map, and then the bottom one is a new sidewalk development zone map. The sidewalk area map will be used for like site-specific development on specific corridors. That corridor, as I'll get into more, will require a certain type of sidewalk where it touches on this map. The bottom one will be used for any subdivision that has new roads, public or private, within that zone will be required internally to have sidewalk network that would then connect to the network on the top map. The whole...
One question. But the area hasn't changed.
I'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
So this whole thing is based on, luckily we had this document that was created back in 2021, and this looked at holistically the entire city. Annexation area was not included in this part, but it showed where the existing sidewalks, cycle tracks, shared use paths exist in the city, and then it offered a proposal of how those should extend in the future. We use this as the basis for developing the next map. So the first one is the area map. This is the section 14 if you're going to build something that triggers the sidewalk. Broke the city up into 5 areas. We didn't include the top portion because there was no recommendation for any additional stuff up there for lot by lot. And so as you can see on the map, it's color coded. So for example, here along this part of 25, there's a sidewalk required on both sides of the building. This blue area would be a shared use path, a minimum of 8 feet if something develops along that corridor. And then these maps have been added to the entire city. As you can see more in the downtown, form-based district areas, Cotton District, there's additional thing called the additional setback requirements, which are already in place. We just added those to this map just so that just reinforces the additional setbacks and what the sidewalk size requirement is of those zones. Then we've also included all of the city, and as you can see when you go down, for example, South Montgomery, all the way to the city limits, that's just calling for like a shared use path, minimum 8 foot wide on one side of the road. This is the current sidewalk development zone map on the left. The new one that would only be used for subdivision stuff is on the right. On the left, you can see a comparison between the two. The green is what we're proposing, and then the red is what is existing. So we've expanded it in some areas, and we've reduced it in other areas. The reason that it changed shape is we're basing it on the previous area map. So to make sure if a subdivision is developed within that zone, that there is a sidewalk requirement on the street to connect to. There's no point in internal sidewalks if they're not going to connect to anything external. And this is just how the sidewalks, a little more explanation of what's required. So if your sidewalk is required just on the opposite side of the street of the property that's developing, the owner or developer is responsible for 50% of the required length of the sidewalk on that opposite side of the street. If they seek an administrative adjustment, if it's granted, then they're required to do 50% of the area of the alternate route or pay 50% of the required fee in lieu. And then this is just a little more explanation of what the 7 different sidewalk types. So you got the sidewalks both sides 5 foot, sidewalk one side 5 foot, shared use path 8 foot, one side, shared use path with sidewalk. Now that can either be a shared use path on one side of the road and then a sidewalk on the other, or they can both be on the same side. Think of how you enter into the university and they have a shared use bike path and then they have a separate sidewalk. That could be a scenario, or the path could be on one side and the sidewalk on the other. Then you have a sidewalk both sides. These are mainly in the form-based districts. 8 foot, which is in the downtown corridor, Main Street University, and then the 6 foot, which is on the side streets like Jackson and Lafayette. And then the 5 foot, which is in the tighter part of the Cotton District, Maxwell, Jarnigan, those areas. With all that said, that's the sidewalks. If you any sidewalk specific questions?
Well, I'm just, I think I copied you on that email the other day about the airport project.
Yep.
That area did not get included, did it? It's not.
It is not.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, yeah, if those roads are industrial, there's really no need to add an additional sidewalk network in there unless there was one already started. So like some of these industrial projects, sidewalk networks have already been started to be added. So it's just completing those out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Was it, you talking about Airport Road?
Yes.
Riley?
Right, well, yeah, airport.
Anybody else? Question on sidewalks? It's a lot to digest, but you'll have.
And with that being said, you can go to the city's website. We're having a little kink with the map right now, but we will have it working. But if you go to departments, planning department. We will keep a link for a map right here. It's kind of our standard interactive map, but it's just based on sidewalks. So you can zoom in and see what properties fall into what sidewalk type. And we'll keep that up until it's updated, and once it's adopted, then it'll be added to other maps for use. But that is under the planning department's page.
And we can also put that on our landing page, right, Joel, since it's going to be a new,
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
so it'll be fresh. Okay.
And then I'll turn this over to Cody and Steen.
Okay. Who's going? Did you flip a coin? Cody, you're up?
I'll jump
Okay.
in. Yeah, mine's pretty short. So the original list, good morning, everybody. The original list Daniel showed, he's carved out my sections, which is 12 through 20. Most of these are very minor, so I'm going to talk about them pretty quickly. If you have a question, you can stop me. And then I'll spend a little bit of time on the last one here. So Amendment 12, we've added a requirement to show home pad grading on the infrastructure plan. It's a minor tweak in what we ask for in submittals to make sure we're doing a better job. 13 has added a requirement for designating haul routes. This is so we can protect local neighborhood streets from major construction. So for example, the Vista, we wouldn't want them hauling concrete and steel trucks through Nash or Herbert Street. So it gives us some leverage to say you can go here and not here if it's needed.
When you do that, when they apply with a permit,
We'll start talking about that during DRC as early as possible, because that affects, your supply and all those kind of things. And we have talked with a few contractors on that, kind of asked for their opinions, and they're more or less okay with this. 14 is about the sidewalks. Daniel has covered this in length. If there's more questions, we can ask those, but we've covered that. 15 says additional requirements from a geotechnical report and asphalt for construction traffic. This is just to help us, if a geotech report requires a higher classification road or a better structure, we can say this is what this recommends, so we're going to follow that. 16 is added requirements for a control measure permit. It's a minor modification to erosion control, nothing major there. 17 and 18 are related to stormwater for the developers agreement. This is kind of what the Glen Creek development we went through. Excuse me. So the language currently says you shall do stormwater if you develop outside of the city and seek water or sewer. Now it says may. So that way we have some discretion on what we require for developments outside of the city, because it's a case-by-case basis. This 19 is a small language change, nothing there. And then 20 is related to flood zones, so I'll spend just about a minute here. So we have a requirement on floodways in Starkville where no development can happen in a floodway. And a floodway is part of a flood zone, but it's different. It is what you would consider the major channel. So if you think of Hollis Creek by the high school, by Dairy Queen, that would be the floodway, it's the creek. It has the highest level of velocity, it's the most dangerous area. And so the ordinance now reads that you cannot do any development in a floodway. Development is a defined term that means anything from construction down to planting a squash garden. Can't do anything. And so while I think that's good, we don't want new construction in floodways. What it does do is it inhibits any existing structure from doing anything. So if you had a building 60 years old, it gets adopted into a floodway, at that point you can't paint your building, you can't put shutters up, replace a roof or anything. And so what this language does is it allows for minor remodeling and renovation and things like that to upkeep your property without adding any potential side effects to the floodway itself.
So the word enhancement, we're going to be.
That's right.
We're
So
going to take that out or else redefine it, because enhancement could be painting.
That's right.
Interior, it could be doing something on the inside that's going to have no effect whatsoever on the floodway, right?
that's correct. The intent is to allow them to improve or at least maintain the property, but also not have detrimental impacts on the floodway. So that's my short and sweet. If there's any questions about that, I can answer
About
those.
that? Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Steen, you're up.
All right, Steve?
I don't have slides.
Okay. Fair enough.
That's okay.
This is basically an addition. That's the reason there's really no slides and no reason to put anything on. If you've driven down Louisville Street or Hiwassee, there's people putting temporary storage containers, and they've been sitting there for a year, and this is supposedly to help address that for commercial and residential. And it doesn't really limit, if you are cleaning out your house, you can still have a dumpster for 10 days, no problem there, no permit, anything. If you have a construction activity going on, the permit is part, I mean, the dumpster and our storage container, you're allowed to have it as long as you got a construction permit. But this mostly addresses the ones like on Lewis Street. It's been sitting there for a year or so, and it limits to where they can only have those 30 days at a time for 60 days a year, because they are meant for temporary use, not for permanent use, and they're setting them in there as permanent. Same thing, there's a house at Hawaii that's got 4 sitting out there that been sitting there for 6 months, and they should only had it there for a month, the way it was written. It also addresses dumpsters being put on Main Street and parking places in the right of way. It's limited days, they can have it up to 30, but if they have a permit, they can bring them in as they're needed, but if we need them moved for special events, they have to move them then. Yeah, but that's the main stuff of this, is just to address that kind of stuff.
Any questions? I'm sure everybody's noticed, I'm one of the ones, to me, Cedar Cove Apartments and then the Paul Davis place at the shopping center there has had a temporary go box kind of container there for the last year or better. And so that's just, that's just not what you want in your commercial facility, so this is from.
And I had emailed Daniel, but it turns out this is a question for you, Steve. There was a house in my neighborhood that had a container. I don't know that they had a construction permit or were required to have a construction permit. When I asked about that, I think I was told that one wasn't necessary based on the type of work that they were doing. How would you address a container in that situation? Because it was in the street, in the driveway, in the street.
The way we wrote this is they don't have that permit, they can have it for 10 days on the property.
Okay.
They can't have it in the street, it has to be on the property. It wouldn't allow them to put it in the street unless it's parking or something like that, that the right of way and the engineer agrees with too.
Okay.
But over there, they had enough room in their lot to place one, so that it wouldn't have been allowed in the street in the first
Okay.
place.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Anyone else, any other questions? All right, thank you, everyone, appreciate it, and I do know what tedious work is, so thank you. All right, we can move to our agenda, which is actually fairly light, I think. We've got 2 sets of minutes. Bert, can we look at those and they pass muster, so to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
We didn't doubt it, thank you. Consent for those? Okay, great. And under mayor's comments, I am going to talk about Cornerstone a little bit, just in terms of where we are, and I'll get some talking points on that one. But and just for discussion, I don't know if anybody's been out there since we had our soft opening, or right before or after it, but it was very successful. I wandered around there. People were stopping me and telling me that they really loved it and thought it was great. Obviously, kinks to work out, because we knew that it wasn't 100% when we did it, but it allows us to discover some areas where we need to make improvements or a few changes and that sort of thing. But I think it's really good. So if you haven't been out to see it recently, please do, because it really is. It's starting to really take shape. So very excited about it.
And you don't actually play baseball to go out and enjoy it. You can go out and walk on the walking trail around the park. So.
And we had a lot of subcontractors who worked really long and hard to push to get it ready for this past weekend, and they did a really good job. 4 Seasons, Rick Crowley's people were out there, hot and heavy, and I know the construction folks doing the asphalt were out there. Mr. Doherty?
Is it open so I can go practice?
No, it's not open for practicing. We have accepted a portion of it, but not all of it, so it's still a construction site, so no, it is not open for practice. Did I get that right? You're welcome. All right, let's see, we have public hearings. We're going to have a variance from fence height requirements. Mr. Calhoun, do you want to bring that forward?
Yeah, this is for the Adelaide subdivision, specifically for corner lots. In most areas, you cannot have a fence over 3.5 feet in the front yard. If you're on a corner lot, your entire frontage is considered front yard. As we all know, Adelaide's a very unique subdivision. It has a very strict design standard. And in their design standards, they actually address that, how that's treated, but it is treated with a higher, like, garden wall up to like 6 to 8 feet. And so what this variance is going to allow them to do is follow their pattern book for the rest of the development and not have to do a lot by lot variance for every fence height, as long as it's based on what's in the pattern book.
Okay, and obviously it'll be a public hearing and you'll have that information.
Yep,
available.
and the Board of Adjustment Appeals agreed with their request and unanimously approved.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, we will take that up as a public hearing and in consideration. And next we have the two structures, one's 307 Apple, the other one's 314 Apple. And both were brought forward to us to call for the public hearing. They will have all the documentation that goes with that. Both areas, they're in Ward 7, and 307 we've addressed before, but unfortunately it was a couple of years ago. We now have a way to manage that because the location of 307 off of Apple was so steep that we couldn't get to it, but I have contacted the school district, and the superintendent, Dr. McGee, said that we could access it from the backside while they're in their intercession. So it will be, right after we approve this, then we will look at sometime between June the 12th and June the 22nd. And Cody's got Chris Black keyed up to do that, so we'll hopefully be able to take care of it very quickly before school comes back in again. So we'll take that fence down, tear it down, and it may be that we tear it down and burn it if we get it far enough away from the adjacent structures. But if not, we'll tear it down and take it away, and then we'll be putting the fence back up again. So, try to get that managed. But that's what those next two items are about, so we'll see the pictures and all the things that go with that. And then we will have the first public hearing on amending the unified development code. Under mayor's business, this is more of a formality than anything. We've got those two grants that we have received, and this is just a formality of us accepting them on the records and in the minutes. So consent for that. And then under board business, we have a resolution for everyone, we're going down to MML. I don't know who all's going, who isn't, other than the vice mayor, who doesn't make have to go in. Alderman Vaughn, you have been kind enough to volunteer to be the voting delegate again. Yeah. Who would like to, I don't remember, Alderman Beatty, I think you were the alternate delegate last time. Are you going this year? Yeah.
He was out.
Are you going this year? All right, so Alderman Beatty for the alternate delegate, so if you would, Lisa, fill in the blanks there, and we'll make that consent. Is everyone good with that?
And I will note that on the printout, it says June 26th through the 39th. The vice mayor
We're not gonna stay on that
The
long.
vice mayor noted that y'all had to come back on the 29th or 30th.
Well,
So-
not only that, but I don't think there's a 39th day in any month.
I don't think so either. So I have corrected that in there.
Thank you. All right, so under Community Development Department, we've got the opportunity to reappoint two folks. We have put it out for advertisement, and the folks that are currently serving were the ones who expressed interest in staying on. So we have former Alderman Dumas, who's been serving as the chair from Ward 6, and Alexis Gregory, Ward 5. So consent for those, okay. We also have appointing Marco Nikovich to Ward 5 to the BOAA. He's agreed to serve again, so consent for that one. Appointing Dr. Shawwacker to the Landscape Advisory Board. He has served before, has he not, Daniel?
This will be his first time.
This will be his first time, and he couldn't be a better person, so consent for that one? All right. And then special event requests to start date is June 10th. They have that paperwork in there. This comes to the board because it is over $5,000. You don't normally see them anymore because most of our special events, other than the Top District Arts Festival and Bulldog Bash and this one, being a fairly new one, exceeded $5,000. So I think the fire department, there you are. Did you get a number for what that, because that's the one area that we did not have a number for?
No cost.
All right, well, it's still in excess of 5, but there's also a certain cost associated with the fire department, which did not have a number attached to it, so it'll be definitely even a little bit more than it's currently on the list. So that's up to y'all. Consistent now? Okay. And I do want to say, help us get the word out, particularly in your ward and with the vice mayor's ward, because this is fireworks. And we've never done fireworks, to my knowledge, in J.L. King Park. So those host neighbors may be very interested in what's going on. So let's make sure we see if we can get that word out. Word of mouth, we'll do social media, obviously, but just make sure everybody knows that there will be fireworks on that Friday night.
Since we had fireworks that we keep every year forever, or at sports place, every year forever, dogs are very aware of fireworks. And so neighbors, and particularly neighbors with
Either
dogs.
inside or pinned up, because they tend to just,
They bolt and
yeah,
run.
they do. So we'll try to add that to social media output, so. All right, so claims docket, and then we have approval to renew insurance. At least you want to share anything? I think it's gone up a few thousand, but not nearly so much because
Claims are doing much better this year.
our
People are
department is
driving
doing
better, everybody's
excellent
taking care of
job of
things better.
managing their vehicles, and we haven't had any fund, so that's a great thing.
It's going up, from what I understand from the insurance companies, one of the lowest increases around the state. It's going up a little less than 3%, which they said the average is about 15% right now, just the cost of repairs and all.
Directly attributable to employment
claims.
acres, so we want to make sure that they are thanked. Consent for that one, all right. HR, Mr. Ashford, these are all hires that are replacement hires, is that correct? Okay, so we have, part-time grounds worker for the airport, consent for that. Gentleman for sanitation and environmental services, a foreman, consent for that. And other sanitation workers, consent for that. And then, entry-level firefighter, consent. And then, part-time custodian for Starkville utilities, consent for that, all right. Under parks, we have, low quote for groundstone construction to remove and place the floor slab. Cody, you want, I was an engineer kind of managing that project, right? So if you want
Yep.
to share a little bit of that?
So the stage is being pulled up for storage use, and when we pulled the stage up, we realized that there was an area of the floor where concrete had been poured in a square flush with the gym floor. So there's no way to get a flush floor because the concrete's flush. We had to get somebody in there to remove the concrete, tight quarters, very small area, and so they're gonna cut that out, remove it, so we can have a flush floor.
What's the timetable of having that floor done?
So the gym floor currently has been refinished with the exception of this little piece here. So once this piece gets done, we think by the end of June, the floor will be completely done and open for use. The week of the 26th, we do have gym curtain that's going to be installed, but I believe the week prior is when they're planning to do this work if it's approved. So we're hoping by the 1st of July, it will be back open in time to bring people inside.
I wondered what that was
Big
about.
profile.
You are being stereotyped, you are. Well, which moves us to the next item, which Brandon, you might as well, this is bids for resurfacing, restriping of courts. You want to share exactly what's going to be there?
We're restriping the courts over at the key at the tennis courts, and so that's going to take place sometime in July into August. While that is going on, obviously the gym will be open, but we're converting the tennis courts into 16 pickleball courts. So we'll have a substantially larger amount of pickleball playing out there. They'll be open, and as we continue to move forward with our park project at McKee, we'll be opening up some space so that we can have a better venue for pickleball. So I think we're being pretty progressive compared to a lot of communities, and really listening to the community members who are asking to have more pickleball.
I also,
And tennis players still have options. in
Yes,
tennis.
there are plenty of options for that. We are still in partner with the high school and tennis courts there. MSU has some couple courts, and we have a court at JLQ that's going to be accessible.
I met with Supervisor Trainer this morning on something separate, but this did come up, and so they are supposedly taking up the safe room on Monday when they meet. So, depending on what they pass or don't pass, he will send that to us afterwards. We'll have to revisit it because it's going to be different than the one we originally approved. So I will bring that when we get it. But, consent for that? All right, thank you. And then consideration of professional services with Form Design. This is Neil Kuvion, who did the original pavilion and splash pad. So he's coming back in with that historical knowledge to expand it and grow it, which is exactly what we want, so. Consent for that one? All right, great. Then under utilities, utilities department, ditch switch, who's here? Ah, there you are, okay, great. I thought you were hiding over there. I'm used to looking at Edward down at the end of the table, so. You want to share is there anything about any of this that we need to have details on?
No, it's about a 15, 16-year-old piece of equipment that we don't use at all on a regular basis, and any type of boring that we would need for our utilities at this point in time, the contract is a lot more efficient than the big machines that we had. But back in the time that they bought it, had a lot of large subdivisions going in, had a need for it, so we just don't have really the need for it. It's just taking up a lot of space.
Okay, all right, sounds good. And did you get with Mr. King?
I did, it would not be walked.
Okay, all right, so consent for this one? All right. Authorization to approve the low bid for the purchase of a used CCTV truck. As y'all recall, we've had trouble with our camera trucks, so this hopefully will put us back in operation. So consent for that one. Authorizing GTPDD to prepare an ARC grant, and I believe Ms. Phyllis is here. you know, I'm not calling on you to do anything, I just wanted to acknowledge you have a colleague who is.
I do. This
Would you like to
is-
introduce her to us?
Yes, I would. GTPDD has a new employee, Vandy Lewis, who will be working with George and myself in the grant writing department.
All right, well, welcome aboard. We have great appreciation for Phyllis, and so we'll look forward to working with you as well. All right, consent for this one? Consent. All right. And then selecting the engineer of record, I believe that that's gonna close, or they're gonna make that choice on Tuesday, so we'll be filling in the blank at that point in time, is that correct? So we'll hold off on this one until we get that, and maybe we can put it on consent at the board meeting.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am?
I apologize for it having to be done like that, but when Chippewa ARC office called, they said, okay, we've got to have this, we want to see a full app. We reviewed the pre-app, submit a full app, but you have until June the 26th to get it in, which is a very tight time frame in order for us to go through the solicitation process of professional services, so it was, do it this way or not.
Okay, all right, well, we appreciate the explanation and the expeditious movement on it. Next item is the Gulf States Engineering for installation of Sherwood Pump number 1. Any issues about that? You good? Okay, consent for that? All right. So we then have 2 items under executive session. One is potential litigation, which has to do with wastewater treatment plant. The other one is personnel, which we will move back up to utilities in our effort to provide the, do we have any additional, where do you go? Now let me in. Okay, additional information, it's a disciplinary matter for utilities, so that will be provided in the packet, but that will be labeled as we have been doing it in the last few months, I guess I should say. Okay? All right, anything else? Anybody else? All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll call it a day. See you on Tuesday.